another topic that I'm super juiced to talk about. It's something I get a lot. Okay, so let's just go into it. Can Jewish people experience racism? That is a question that I get a lot in the different trainings that I do across the states. And I am so excited to spend time with you breaking it down. Let's get to it. So, as you might recall, we actually have a video that explains the definition of racism. Okay, remember, racism equals racial prejudice plus what? Systemic power, okay? Racial prejudice plus power. That is critical, okay? I explained that a week ago. I want you to remember that as we continue to go into the content for today. Let me go ahead and break it down, all right? So many times people confuse being Jewish as a race, okay? I just wanna go ahead and say, when we do that, we completely erase Jews of color, okay? So, in very simple terms, there are white Jewish people, there are Asian Jewish people, there are Black Jewish people, there are Latino Jewish people, and so on and so forth, okay? Judaism is a religion and it's also a culture, okay? That is important. It's different than other types of religious groups whereby it's not just a religion, right? It's also kind of like a culture and so on and so forth, okay? With that said though, it is not to be confused with an ethnicity. It's really not to be confused with a racial group. It's not to be confused with even a nationality. Those are all different things. So if you don't take anything from this video, please take that, okay? That being Jewish is not a race, okay? Being Jewish is not a race, okay? It is a culture, identity, as well as a religious group, okay? Let's just keep it simple. This is a very popular misperception. I was even having a conversation with my mom a couple weeks ago, and she accidentally, as a Black woman, conflated being Jewish with a race, okay? So this is not just a misperception that white people have, it's a perception that even Black, Indigenous, and other people of color have as well. So now since we've gone through that, and we've established the fact that, hey, knock, knock, who's there? The truth. There's Jews of color. The fact that we've said that, I think actually affirms the fact that, guess what, not all Jews are white. And by suggesting so, actually just kind of continues to erase Jews of color, okay? So before we go any further, I just wanna go ahead and affirm the fact that not all Jews are white. Some of you might have come into this video and you're so excited about being like, no, Jewish people can't experience racism, because you were assuming that all Jewish people were white. But they're not. So now that we've established the fact that not all Jews are white, and actually there are a lot of Jews of color, then now we can get into the fact that, hey, do Jews of color experience racism? What about white Jews? Do white Jews experience racism? So I feel like it's pretty obvious to address the fact that, hello, based on the video last week and based on the video a few months ago that I will go ahead and link, right? Jews of color are people of color. And if people of color experience racism, because, hello, the definition of racism is really the oppression of Black and brown people in the US and also globally, then that means that Jews of color, by definition of being of color, also experience racism, right? So that's kind of like all right, so Jews of color do experience racism. Now let's get to the second portion, which is, do white people who are Jewish experience racism? So a lot of people actually tell me, hey, Jewish people are not white. And that is something that is a longer conversation that I will not get into all of it in its entirety, but I do think it's important to recognize the fact that Jewish people who are not of color are white. Okay? Let me say that again. Jewish people who are not of color are white. Okay? So you can be in the Middle East and be white. You can be in the Middle East and be brown. You can be in the Middle East and be black. You can be in the Middle East and be Asian. Okay? Being of Middle Eastern descent is not a race. Okay? It is not a race. So Jews who are living in the Middle East or who have family in the Middle East, or maybe they migrated to the US for whatever reason, that does not just offset the fact that they are a person of color, right? Because guess what? There are racial groups even within the Middle East. So it is so critically important to acknowledge the fact that a lot of Jewish people are actually white, and some of them are willing to admit the fact that they are white as their race. Some of them are still having a hard time admitting the fact that they are white as their race, okay? Again, Judaism is not to be confused with race, okay? I think a lot of the times the pushback that I hear about is, but haven't Jewish people experienced like targeted oppression, right? And the answer to that is yes, of course, but not all targeted oppression is racism. Let me repeat that.
Not all targeted oppression is racism.
So, for example, point in case, I am a woman, right? Not all of the targeted oppression that I experience is because I'm black, right? It's not because of racism. It, in some cases, is because of sexism. And I know this because of the sexist comments that I get when it comes to my role in society as a woman, right? A lot of it doesn't necessarily have to do with the fact that I'm black, right? It has to do with the fact that I'm a woman, right? So that's sexism, right? When we're thinking about this in the context of the oppression that Jewish people experience, I think it's important for us to take a step back and be like, okay, well, we do know that it is a level of discrimination, but what type of discrimination is it? It's not racial discrimination because being Jewish is not a race. So then we're like, oh wait, it's anti-Semitic, right? It's anti-Semitism, right? This is so critically important, okay? That is important to just name the fact that Jewish people have and still do experience anti-Semitism, and that needs to be named, right? Jewish people who are white have and still do experience white privilege because guess what? They are white, right? And and because of them being white within the context of the US, they experience systemic power, going back to the definition of racism, okay? Now, when we think about Jews of color, then it's important to note that they also, because of their religious and cultural identity, experience anti-Semitism, okay? But guess what? Because they also have that dual identity of also being a person of color, they also experience the added intersectionality of experiencing racism, okay? So Jews of color actually have this really unique blend of experiencing racism on top of anti-Semitism, okay? Whereas for white Jews, they experience anti-Semitism and benefit from white privilege, and they do not experience racism. They experience a different type of oppression, which is anti-Semitism, okay? So I hope that was helpful. Again, I get this question so many times, and so many times I've noticed that folks have been a little defensive. I just want to encourage you that it's really important to name what we are experiencing and not accidentally conflate what we're experiencing, because if we conflate it, then we're not really able to address it, okay? So I hope that this blessed you. I hope it's helpful, and guess what? Share it with somebody, because the world needs more truth. Talk to you later. Until next time.